For that live report, now we head to Holyoke, where the third and final suspect has turned himself in following a shooting last month that left a pregnant woman injured and claimed the life of her baby Ezekiel, who the city's mayor named his new public safety plan after.
Western Mass News reporter Olivia Hickey joins us live in studio after speaking with the Hamden District Attorney about the case. Olivia, what did he tell you?
Chris, Abby, District Attorney Anthony Gallooni tells me while this part of the investigation is over, it does continue. Meantime, city leaders are relieved.
The city of Holyoke one step closer to closure Friday. Hamden District Attorney Anthony Gallooni speaking with Western Mass News as all three suspects involved in the fatal shooting in Holyoke that took the life of a pregnant woman's baby last month are now off the streets.
The process of his coming forward was fortunately safe and there was no issues associated with that. He had an attorney and that attorney brought him forward.
28-year-old Kermith Alvarez turned himself in to state police Friday. He is scheduled to be arraigned Monday. The two other suspects, 30-year-old John Luis Sanchez and 22-year-old Alejandro Ramos, were arraigned last month and appeared in court again Friday. While this part of the case is complete, Gallooni tells us they still have work to do.
It's really about the prosecution. It's really about making sure that our evidence is complete, our evidence is completely turned over to defense counsel, and that we begin to prepare to litigate a very important case with major consequences. These cases will stretch for quite a long time. They're complicated. They're obviously very consequential.
Holyoke Mayor Joshua Garcia says this gives the city relief, sharing a statement that reads in part, "I have full confidence that all those who were alleged to be involved in the October 4th tragedy will be brought to justice, and I have full confidence in our criminal justice system." It goes on to say, "Our hearts are still heavy. The tiny infant who lost his life in the shooting will be buried today." Earlier this week, the mayor also released his public safety plan, created in wake of the shooting, named after Ezekiel, the baby who was killed. While Gallooni didn't have a part in the plan, he says he has worked closely with authorities to make sure action is taken to stop gun violence that continues to impact Hamden County and especially communities like Springfield and Holyoke.
Applying resources to the hotspots and the problematic areas in this region, and I think we've been somewhat successful, but there's a lot of work yet to be done on the preventative side, on the policing side, to make sure our communities and our neighborhoods are as safe as possible.
Gallooni adds gun violence is something everyone should look out for to keep their communities safe. Meantime, Ezekiel's plan will be presented to the Holyoke City Council Thursday, along with the mayor's supplemental budget proposal. Reporting live, Olivia Hickey for Western.